the thing with leadership is they usually dump all the issues on the leader, and so it becomes the leader's problem. Whereas in fact the leader hasn't created the problem, or may not even be part of the problem. And so I want to go back and say, well, whose problem is it really?
Welcome to Dealing Hope. My name is Eddie Tupai. I'm so glad you can join me in this episode of Dealing Hope with Bob Larsen, my very good friend. Pastor Bob, as he is affectionately known by so many, is the lead pastor and president for the North New Zealand Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. I have been blessed over the years by Bob's insights and wisdom about life and leadership, and I'm sure you will be blessed as you join with me in this episode of Dealing Hope with Pastor Bob Larsen. Thanks for joining me for Dealing Hope. It's been a while trying to catch you, Bob.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I'm really interested in the opportunity to have a conversation with you because we've known each other for a long time.
It is, yeah.
And now and then we'll have, as part of our conversation, little glimpses into our past as we share about childhood or experiences that we've had. And I do know that when you and I started working here in New Zealand together was the time when I began to truly appreciate you and understand some of your journey. But let me go further back. Where were you born, and a little bit about your family, please, your upbringing.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie.
Yeah.
You know, it is good to have a catch up with you. And yeah, so I'm a South Islander. When I'm discussing with my wife, who's from the North Island, I say I'm from the mainland. Born in Christchurch,
Yes.
but raised in Nelson.
Okay.
So that's
beautiful part of the world.
It is, yeah. And I have, there's 6 of us, so I've got 5 siblings.
Yes.
And yeah, we all grew up in Nelson, and then we sort of went off in different directions.
And so sad just recently, the passing of your mum.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about her and her influence on your life.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, my mum was really special. I think everyone says their mum is special, and mine certainly was. She was a mum who prayed for her kids.
Amen.
Right to the end, you know. She was, and that really had a big impact on me, knowing that she was a woman who prayed every day for her children, for her grandchildren, and so she would say that she's a nobody, you know, like she didn't achieve anything great as far as this world was concerned. That she would say, well, I'm just mum. But the impact that she had on her children really came through in the last couple of months of her life. And in the hospitals, both in Christchurch, she was in Christchurch for a month, and then in Nelson, all the staff commented how they appreciated the family's love for mum. And it was really, we're reflecting back to her what she had shown us all those years. So she was a really special mother and woman. Yeah.
What a blessing. What a
Yeah.
blessing. Well, we look forward to seeing her and all who have gone before us when Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
You ended up at Avondale College to train to be a pastor. Early 80s or late 70s?
Late 70s, yeah.
What led to that decision to go to Avondale so that you could train to become a pastor?
Yeah. I didn't choose to go to be a pastor. I had my plan in life was to be a farmer. And through high school, I did all my farming courses, agricultural, animal husbandry, and all the rest of it. So that was my direction in life.
Yes.
But for some unknown reason, I still don't know why, I decided to go to Longburn College for 1 year.
Okay.
And created a bit of problems there with the staff, and was about to be expelled. But one of the
I can't believe that.
No, I wouldn't have done anything. But it was at Longburn that one of the teachers, Adrian Allison, he suggested to me that I go and be a pastor. which I thought was the worst job. I had seen pastors struggle, and somehow the Lord changed my heart then, and I felt compelled from then on. Even when I graduated, I still didn't want to be a pastor.
Yes, yes.
And but what a journey!
Amen.
It's just been amazing
Amen.
that the Lord has said, "No, this is where I'm taking you." And He took me. He might say kicking and screaming, but I've never regretted that call.
Never looked back.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, before we get too far into that part of your life, you took a year off, or was it after, when you went to Tonga?
Yeah.
Now, not many pastors that I know have done some time in Tonga. Pastors born and raised in New Zealand like yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that experience, because I have a sense that made an impact on you.
Well, it did actually. Yeah. Thanks, Eddie. When I was at Avondale College, my roommate for 1 or 2 years was a Tongan, George Nakao.
Oh, there's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yes, great man.
So he convinced me that I should come over there and spend a year in Tonga, staying with him and being the assistant pastor at the church. And so I went through the right channels, went through volunteers at the SPD and through to Tonga Mission, and they all accepted me. And I managed to go across to Tonga back in 1980, I think it was 1981. However, this is just a personal thing between us. That
I won't tell anyone.
That before I left, I actually got engaged before I left.
Okay.
And so that did impact how long I stayed there. It was
As a bond.
I was supposed to go for a year, but I only lasted 6 months.
There you go.
Came back to get married, but I really enjoyed my time in Tonga, and it really did give me a taste of the Pacific and a love for the Pacific people. And so after that, we were open when we got married. We were open to go and work in Papua New Guinea or the Pacific somewhere, and that was, the start of it was my volunteer time in Tonga.
Yeah, and you've spent some great time in the Pacific, and I know your love for the Pacific.
Yeah.
But let me just come back to the engagement. Anne, beautiful woman, godly woman, wise, someone who I admire because of all those attributes, but she's so practical. And I see her come up with, something else that she's done. But tell me about the importance of this partnership that you have with Anne in your ministry, because I know that's very important to you both.
Yeah, thanks. Early in my ministry, I had some decisions to make about which way to go into the future. And she said to me, I will never, step in your way of, if you feel the Lord is leading in a particular direction, I will support you. Mm-hmm. And so that's been her strength, that she's my support. And she wants to be in the background, but in fact, often when we've left places, churches or whatever, they'll say to me, thanks, Bob, we appreciate your ministry, but we're really going to miss Anne. and it's obvious that her support of me is actually a ministry in itself, and she loves people wherever she goes. So I'm so blessed to have her as my partner in ministry.
Yeah, I remember that trip, Tessa, and you and me were driving back from Gisborne, and we stopped at your place in Whakatane before Tessa and I made our way back to Auckland. Yeah. And Anne was just insistent, no, you've got to have something to eat. And I don't know how she did it, but she just whipped up fish and chips in no time, and had it all packaged up for us to eat in the car while we kept driving to Auckland, and it was just the best. But I must say, I have loved hearing her speak to the spouses of pastors who have been ordained recently, and she's just spoken with that heart of a pastor, but also of someone understanding what it's like to be a spouse, a partner in ministry, and very insightful and very compassionate as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, let's move to leadership in ministry. And
Your journey has taken you through local church, departmental roles, even, I say even because being a secretary is a real challenge. For me, I know that would be a role I would find very difficult. One you took on because of your ministry heart. So you've had quite a variety of roles, and I've only spoken of a couple. When you reflect on those roles and what you have learned about leadership itself, what would be some of the lessons? What would be some of the principles that you've come away with that have become your bedrock or your go-to when it comes to leading well as you do?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the place where I would always start would be listen. Because it's easy for me to jump in with a conclusion right at the start, and it may not be the right direction at all. So, and in order to listen, to ask the right questions.
Okay.
And it's still a skill that I'm learning, is to be able to ask the right questions, and then consult well with the team to have the right people around you. So that's what's helped me. I can't say that I have any great skills in leadership, but it's having the right people around and asking the right questions that just helps to bring clarity to a situation.
I've noticed how you've done that when it comes to consulting and getting the right people around you. But I do notice, yes, you've highlighted listening. On the other side of that is asking the right questions, and I notice you take a great deal of effort to ask questions, and you always have pen and paper and you're writing things down. You come to meetings and you have things already ready to ask. What would be your key little go-tos when it comes to finding out what you need to find out?
Yeah. I think the question that I have, whether I say it in these words or not, but I'm always thinking, is there something more? Okay. So I asked the question. Okay. I had an interview this morning on Zoom.
Yes. And
there was an issue that was working through.
Yes.
And then I said, well, is there anything more? Okay. And then that often there is something more, because people only say so much, but then they're wanting to say more.
Yes.
Again, it's not a question that has a lot of detail, but just giving them the opportunity to go that extra distance and to try and understand what's behind the issue. Trying to understand, is there another layer below that is causing what we see to bubble up at this moment, but we actually have to deal with something that is beneath the surface.
So it's a question that you use to try and peel back layers.
Yeah.
And you're creating an environment, I guess, to allow, as you say, the person to open up about what may be the real problem.
Yeah. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
Oh man. You're great at collecting quotes and sayings and ideas and stories. Share with us about what's the methodology behind that great ability to collect gems and resources.
Yeah, I've never been asked that question before.
You do it well, so it must be happening there somehow.
Yeah, but I do. You're right. I do like to collect quotes, and because to me a quote is like a condensed version of a big truth.
I like that.
And so the book of Proverbs just says it so well. Each of those proverbs is like a quote.
Yes.
And you can say that little thing, and then people can, understand a big picture.
Yes.
So quotes are something which I love to. In fact, every day I try and find something which is a little bit of a quote, or sometimes share something.
So do you have places you go to find quotes or stories, or is there an actual plan to, or had, because you just have so many.
Yeah. No, I don't actually go searching for them, but I'm listening all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being aware, you have a radar out,
Yeah.
looking for these gems.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this morning on the way to work in the traffic, and then I noted, okay, he's saying this and this, so when I got to the next traffic lights, I just wrote it down. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, let's just go a little deeper here. I'm going to peel back a layer.
Yeah.
But leadership isn't easy. It's difficult, and it's tough at times. And let's just talk a little bit about the challenges of ministry and leadership, and trying to work through the big one that most people will always struggle with, including myself, and have a certain resistance to, is conflict. Some of your thoughts on conflict, and because that's part of leadership, some experiences, well, not experiences, but what you've learned from the experiences you've had with dealing with conflict and leadership.
To start with, I usually go back to parenting.
Wow.
It's a good place to experience conflict. We have three lovely daughters. They're all adults now.
Yes.
And I remember when they were growing up, usually two of them would gang up on one of them,
Okay.
And one of the questions that I would ask the kids when they were in, they'd come to me with the problem of the other one, is the question, whose problem is it really? And the thing with leadership is they usually dump all the issues on the leader, and so it becomes the leader's problem. Whereas in fact the leader hasn't created the problem, or may not even be part of the problem. And so I want to go back and say, well, whose problem is it really? And it's easy to try and find solutions outside, but often the solutions are from within.
Right.
But we have to try and help them to recognise that, okay, it is their problem, and what is the pathway they're going to work on solving the problem.
Yes.
Otherwise we become people who are just trying to put out fires, and you finish that one, you go on and you come back and it's on fire again. So that's
another great question. So the question is, what is the real? Just phrase that question one more time for me.
Yeah. So whose problem is it really?
Whose problem is it really?
Yeah. So trying to understand who's going to have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Because if it's their problem, then they have to take responsibility for it.
So Bob, whose problem is it?
It's my problem. Yeah.
I think conflict is so important in being able to navigate through, and that kind of a question really would place the issue in its right place. And then once that is identified, then you can work through. And often, as you say, that person or that group, they have the answer to that problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just another thing too is we have to decide, and I'm going back to our kids, and this is where my wife, she would often say to the kids when they're having conflict, is it a moral problem? In other words, there are different levels of problem, and some, if it's at this level, we have to deal with it in this way. But if it's often a small problem, is blown up into something big. And so you have to have these little questions. Well, what size problem is it? and we have to deal with it accordingly. Yeah.
So easy to overreact.
Yeah.
Or at the other end, not take it seriously enough.
Yeah, true.
So now, as the president for the North New Zealand Conference, I've noticed you have a message that you are repeating, and I sense it's something that's been placed on your heart from John 15.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about what God has placed on your heart, Pastor Bob.
It stems really from John 15 verse 16, where Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last."
Amen.
And the reason I started that, which is that end of the parable, is because that was the verse that really stuck with me when I was called into ministry.
Okay.
You did not choose me, but I chose you. But going back to the start of the parable, the vine and the branches, and we come to verse 5, which is probably the most well-known verse. You know,
Yes.
I am the vine, you are the branches.
Yes.
If you remain in me and I in you, you'll bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
Yes.
So there's all that depth of relationship that's in there between Jesus and the disciples.
Yes.
And I see that relationship abiding or remaining in Jesus with the word connect.
Okay.
You know, if we stay connected to Jesus,
Yes.
he wants to connect with me. He wants to connect with you. He wants to connect with everybody. That's his desire.
Absolutely.
Is to connect with.
That's right.
He
That's
died
right.
for everybody.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so to me, that connection is a place of relationship.
Okay.
And out of that
Yes.
relationship with Jesus, if we have that right relationship with him, and he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life,
Yes.
you know, the life flows from him, the
Amen.
truth comes from him,
Yes.
you know, it's the way. So that word to me, the word connect, is really an important word, because it's the place I want to start, is my connection with Jesus. Yeah.
Connect. Any other words that are key as part
Yeah.
of this vision, this direction that you're sensing from God?
Yeah, so I do have two other words that go with connect.
Okay.
Because when we are connected to Jesus, it's a little bit like the grapevine,
Yes.
and as the branch is connected to the vine, it doesn't just stay this size. It actually grows, and as the branch grows, it grows for a purpose. It grows to produce fruit.
Yes. That's
And
right.
so the second word that I have is grow.
Okay.
The hard thing with grow is that whatever is growing is changing.
True.
And none of us really like to change. You know, it's like, I'll change at my own time, but the Lord is wanting to change us,
Yeah.
reshape us. And not only that, it says, you know, my Father is the gardener and he prunes every branch that bears fruit. So
Yeah.
with growth comes change, with change comes pruning. And, you know, there's the whole picture of sanctification in there.
Yes. Yes.
It flows out of, you might say, justification. We're connected.
Yes. Yes.
But
you're
out of that
connected.
flows this reshaping
Yeah.
and reforming, the grow.
Oh, I like this.
So my
Yes.
second word is grow. And the
Yeah.
third word is really the purpose of the grapevine. And in John 15, verse 8, he says, this is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit.
More grapes.
Yeah, so multiply is the third word that I have.
Multiply.
Yeah. So the purpose of being connected is not just so I'm feeling nice and fuzzy with the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually to multiply.
So when I connect to the vine, I'm going to experience change. I'm going to grow, because if I'm not growing, then I'm dying.
That's right.
But then you grow so that,
Yeah.
there'll be a blessing for others.
That's right. Yeah.
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 Thank you, Pastor Bob.
Can I just add one more bit to this one here?
Absolutely.
I think of what Ellen White says in Ministry of Healing, page 143, which we quote so often, you know. Christ's method alone will bring true success. And it goes on in there to describe how he mingled among men as one who desired their good. And so with that connection, because he's wanting to connect, but he connects with care, with compassion, with communication, and Jesus' method is one of really it's not just a mental assent, it's not just a truth level, but he's actually mingling as one who desires their good, that compassion.
Yes, yes.
And so this connection is not just okay, I've got my name on the books.
Yeah, it's not just an attachment.
That's right, yeah. It's actually a living, flowing, and so if we can have, and for myself, I'm trying to connect to my neighbours.
Yes.
Because I believe that I'm put where I am so that I can help the truth of Christ, the life, sap of Christ,
Yes.
to connect to my neighbours and friends.
and to flow through and grow that person in some way that is a blessing.
That's right, yeah. So that's where I'm, just enjoying that passage of John 15, the vine and the branches.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for giving some of the background in terms of, it goes back to when you were first called. And here you are at the stage of life and ministry, and God still has that strong call on your life and extending that through your leadership in North New Zealand. Well, thank you for Dealing Hope.
Yeah.
And I know many people will be blessed, and wish you God's peace and strength as you continue to serve Him. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Eddie. My pleasure.